Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Eloisa Ramos, and I am here with my friends. Hi, Teresa. Hi, Connie.
Hi.
And my daughter, Sonia. And we are studying the text of A Course in Miracles. We are on chapter 3 and section 7. So chapter 3 is the innocent perception. And section 7 is creating versus the self-image. Okay, let me start first. Okay, paragraph 1. Every system of thought must have a starting point. It begins with either a making or a creating, a difference we have already discussed. Their resemblance lies in their power as foundations. Their difference lies in what rests upon them. Both are cornerstones for systems of belief by which one lives. It is a mistake to believe that a thought system based on lies is weak. Nothing made by a child of God is without power. It is essential to realize this because otherwise you will be unable to escape from the prison you have made. Okay, so the first line is basically saying there's two thought systems. There's the ego thought system, and there's the thought system that we refer to as God's thought system, which is the thought system of truth. And they each have their foundation. And it's distinguishing the foundations as making or creating. And that's why we want to try to catch ourselves when we're using those words so that we can begin to discern and begin to catch ourselves when we use creating, but we really mean making. And so the resemblance in both of them here is that they both come from the power that is the source of everything. And we call that power God. Okay, but the difference is what rests upon them. So the truth, what is true, rests on one, which is true perception. The other side is a system that's based on lies, which is the false perception. And we also refer to those as the right mind and the wrong mind. And both of them are systems of belief by which we live. Now, just because one system is lies doesn't mean that it's weak, because we give it belief. And it's only because we give it belief that it has power. Okay. So, and that's how we make, that's what's called making. So when we believe something that is a lie, that is not true, okay, we make it true for us, for ourselves. But it's not going to be true necessarily for anybody else unless they have the same belief. So it's not an absolute truth like the one that comes from the right mind, which is true for everyone without exception. Okay, and so any questions there? No, okay. All right, paragraph 2, Sonia.
You cannot resolve the authority problem by depreciating the power of your mind. To do so is to deceive yourself, and this will hurt you because you really understand the strength of your... Wait, let me read that again. To do so is to deceive yourself, And this will hurt you because you really understand the strength of the mind. You also realize that you cannot weaken it any more than you can weaken God. The quote devil unquote is a frightening concept because he seems to be extremely powerful and extremely active. He is perceived as a force in combat with God, battling him for possessions of his creations. The devil deceives by lies and builds kingdoms in which everything is in direct opposition to God. Yet he attracts men rather than repels them, and they are willing to sell him their souls in return for gifts of no real worth. This makes absolutely no sense.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but we still believe. I grew up believing definitely in the devil, and my mom definitely told me many stories about the devil and what would happen to me if I, wasn't a good person. So anyway, or a good quote unquote female, more so than a male. But okay, so the thing that is really emphasizing here is in the first line, you cannot resolve the authority problem by depreciating the power of the mind. Okay, so um, so what happens is that when we believe lies, they can become very, very scary. Like the idea of the devil is a very scary thing. Okay, and if we try to resolve that problem by saying, "Oh, well, that's just a lie, it doesn't have any power. It's those thoughts don't have any power. I'm going to deceive myself about the power of my own thoughts rather than making a decision and saying, okay, that's not something I want to believe in. Okay. and I'm going to decide, I have to make a decision here. What do I want to believe? Okay. And then take responsibility for what I believe rather than just accept that, well, this is what my culture believes. This is what my religion believes. This is what my family believes. This is what my friends believe. And so how am I not going to believe in that? Okay. So, um, so therefore, we want to recognize the strength of our mind so that we can take responsibility and choose our beliefs wisely. Okay, because we can't weaken that power. It comes from God. And concepts like the devil become very frightening because we have made them beliefs that can oppose and basically attack God by offending God, by sinning against God. And so, and of course, with that comes all this guilt, because once we believe it, we have to feel guilt because we have taken the wrong side. We've actually made a fantasy world of illusion where the evil forces are in battle with God as a force. Okay. And so, it's just kind of pointing out here how it doesn't make any sense that evil would attract men rather than repel them, and that they're willing to sell their souls in return for gifts that have no real worth. And so it doesn't make any sense. And that's why the ego thought system, if you really look at it, that's why we have to do the inner journey of looking at our beliefs and our thoughts, because they don't make sense. And if we don't look at them and question them, we hold on to them and literally, you could say have, we are being, it's not guidance, it's more like driven by these insane ideas. Because they're very terrifying and they're very fearful, you know. Um, and there's all this guilt under there. So yeah. Any questions there? I mean, the idea that you can sell your soul to the devil, I mean, you know. Connie, were you going to say something?
No. Just unmuting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they've made, I forget, I saw a play. My kids were in a play in high school one time. I forget the name of the play, but you know, it was about that. You know, there's a lot of songs about that. I mean, it's kind of folklore, you know, it's part of the sort of the culture. So anyway, okay, number 3.
We have discussed the fall or separation before, but its meaning must be clearly understood. The separation is a system of thought, real enough in time, though not in eternity. All beliefs are real to the believer. The fruit of only one tree was, quote unquote, forbidden in the symbolic garden, but God could not have forbidden it, or it could not have been eaten. If God knows his children, and I assure you that he does, would he have put them in a position where their own destruction was possible? The quote unquote forbidden tree was named, quote unquote, the tree of knowledge. Yet God created knowledge and gave it freely to his creations. The symbolism here has been given many interpretations, but you may be sure that any interpretation that sees either God or his creations as capable of destroying their own purpose is in error.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that paragraph is, I think, is pretty clear. The part here about the fall. So he says, let's see, line 6. If God knows his children, I assure you that he does. That he does. Would he have put them in a position where their own destruction was possible? Okay, so the idea was that, you know, when Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, that they committed a sin. And in committing a sin, they lost, you could say that they lost their perfection. And therefore they became this naked body. So it's almost like they became a separate object from God, who is now somewhere out there, not one with them. And that would be considered destruction because it means that they lost their eternal nature. Because now they're a body that can die. Let's see. Okay, I don't think there's anything else in there that needs more explanation. Number 2, the separation is a system of thought real enough in time, though not in eternity. So it's really important to recognize when the Course uses the word real, because we tend to use the word real for the world of bodies. We call bodies real, you know, and even I have a little bit of a hard time trying to use the right, I don't even know how to explain to my grandkids when they're playing video games. And I'm trying to say, well, no, your characters, you know, you're manipulating them with the controls, and they, you know, if you mess up, they die. Mario dies. Okay, but he's a character. He doesn't die. Okay. And then, and I can say, well, that's not real. Okay. You start over again and there's Mario again. Okay. But it's almost as if Mario is eternal. And then we, the body, is not real. Otherwise, I have to say, well, what happens to you? You're real, but you're flesh and blood, you know?
Mm.
And then, well, you don't have, 6 lives like Mario. So Mario is actually in a better position than we are. I mean, I, I mean, the body is not real. The character is not real. So how am I going to distinguish virtual reality from non-virtual reality? It's,
Mhm.
because, but anyway, so.
Yeah, anyway. Wow, you might want to
It's
hold off
almost,
on.
like, it's like one, it's those nesting dolls, of
Mm.
illusion. So you have a smaller nesting doll in the virtual reality, and then you have this other doll that's this big world virtual reality, a little bit
Mm.
like the dreaming at night, where you have the dream at night. So that's like a virtual reality. Then you wake up and you think, oh, thank goodness, I'm in reality now, and that was a dream. Oh, but wait a minute, this is a dream too, So this is another nesting doll, it's another layer. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. Okay. Number 4.
Eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge is a symbolic expression for usurping the ability for self-creating. This is the only sense in which God and his creations are not co-creators. The belief that they are is implicit in the self-concept, or the tendency of the self to make an image of itself. Images are perceived, not known. Knowledge cannot deceive, but perception can. You can perceive yourself as self-creating, but you cannot do more than believe it. You cannot make it true. And as I said before, when you finally perceive correctly, you can only be glad that you cannot. Until then, however, the belief that you can is the foundation stone in your thought system, and all your defenses are used to attack ideas that might bring it to light. You still believe you are an image of your own making. Your mind is split with the Holy Spirit on this point, and there is no resolution while you believe the one thing that is literally inconceivable. This is why you cannot create and are filled with fear about what you make.
Oh, okay. So this was really, really helpful to what I was just saying. Okay, eating of the tree of the tree of knowledge is symbolic expression for usurping the ability for self-creating. Okay, so so we believe that that we are self-creating in the sense that we give ourselves life, and a lot of times we say, well, that's procreation. Okay, but what it's talking about here is about image making, and when you look at the body, we don't tend to think of the body as an image, but it is an image. It's just that it's a 3-dimensional image. Okay. But basically everything in the world, all the physical things in the world are projections of thoughts. So the thoughts become, quote, manifested in the world, and now they're 3-dimensional images. Okay, so it really is just like another virtual reality. It's another, video game. Okay, so in the sense that we believe that we are an image, a body, and we believe that we can make ourselves as we want to be. So I can make an image of myself and present that to the world online. And I can paint a picture. It's just like painting a picture and say, here, this is what I am. Because, and I have my little bio, my biography, and my little history about where I was born and everything. And that's an image. And so to believe that I am an image is to perceive and to not know the truth about my creation. Okay, which is beyond perception. It's not a concept. And that's why we can present images to people and they can deceive. Oh my goodness, when I married you, I never realized you were this way. Okay, who did I marry? You were so different when you were my boyfriend. It's like, you're a different person now, that kind of thing. So it's like, oh my gosh, you have changed. You're not the same. Okay, well, all of those are just images. So the point is that, yeah, we can perceive ourselves as being self-created. Not only do I think that I can create myself, but I think that I can create my own life. I can create my own, world here. And I can manifest whatever I want, So, and we can believe it, but it's not going to be true. Okay. It'll be true for us, but it's not going to be true for everybody. So the foundation for the ego thought system, and it says in your thought system, see line 9, until then, however, the belief that you can is the foundation stone in your thought system. So we made the ego thought system up. We made the belief in separation up because we want to be self-created. We want to make up an image of ourselves and say, present it to others and say, this is who I am. Or this is how I know myself. This is my background, my history, what I've done, all my accomplishments. Here's my resume. It's right there on paper. And so, and therefore, any ideas that would contradict that, I'm going to defend against. Because I want to preserve and protect that sense of self. And I'm going to preserve and protect those beliefs. And that's why that's why it can seem really hard to let go of our own belief system because we protect it. And so number 10 says, you still believe you are an image of your own making. And images can be seen. And so that's what we believe. That's what we believe we are. Your mind is split with the Holy Spirit on this point because the Holy Spirit knows the truth. It's our connection to truth. It's our right mind. And the Holy Spirit knows that we are not an image. We are real. And so there's no resolution why you believe the one thing that's literally inconceivable. And that would be that we are not real, because if we make ourselves into a self-concept, then we have made ourselves unreal. And now we're a body that's a character in an illusion. And a lot of people, actually feel that way. They feel like they're little Mario in the world and that outside forces control them. And they just react. They're just reacting to, what happens in their town, what happens in their family, what happens to them. And so that's interesting that in the you could say in the willingness to be separate, which is the desire to be greater than God, because it's the belief that we can actually attack God and usurp his power, that in doing that, we actually become this powerless little character in this world that seems to be, threatening and attacking. And number 12, that is why you cannot create and are filled with fear about what you make. Yes. So the things that we make are projections. And because they're projections, we think that they have left our mind, and we no longer have control of them. And that's why we're afraid of them. So then we become afraid of our own beliefs. And we become afraid of our own mind, of our own thinking. Okay. Okay. Number 5. Let's see. Is it my turn? Whose turn is it?
I think so.
Yeah, my turn. The mind can make the belief in separation very real and very fearful. And this belief is the quote unquote devil. It is powerful, active, destructive, and clearly in opposition to God, because it literally denies his fatherhood. Look at your life and see what the devil has made. But realize that this making will surely dissolve in the light of truth, because its foundation is a lie. Your creation by God is the only foundation that cannot be shaken, because the light is in it. Your starting point is truth, and you must return to your beginning. Much has been seen since then, but nothing has really happened. Yourself, with a capital S, is still in peace, even though your mind is in conflict. You have not yet gone back far enough, and that is why you become so fearful. As you approach the beginning, with a capital B, you feel the fear of the destruction of your thought system upon you, as if it were the fear of death. There is no death, but there is a belief in death. Okay. Okay. So the belief in separation is really, what it calls the belief in quote unquote the devil, because to believe that we have separated from God means that we accomplished basically the impossible. And because we would have had to have more power than God to have overcome oneness. And therefore we, destroyed oneness, and now everything is separate. And because and not just that, but it means that we have made kind of God angry. We did something bad to God. So we opposed God, because we're saying, look, I make myself. You're not my father. And so what the devil has made can be very fearful. I mean, when we look at the world and we think of, oh my gosh, look at all this, sickness, threat of war, whatever, catastrophes, there's, I don't know, hurricanes, and there's all kinds of stuff going on, fires and everything. And yeah, it gets very, very scary. But all of this will dissolve in the light of truth, because its foundation is a lie. the separation never happened. That's the atonement. And we have to remember to go back to the foundation for the right mind, which is that our creation is by God. And it is the only foundation that cannot be shaken, because everything else in the world is unstable. I was having a conversation with my husband the other morning. He was telling me about something with the financial stuff that's going on. And he was saying, oh, well, you know, people need to, you know, she's giving really good advice and people need to do this with their money and do this with their money. And I'm like, okay. I go, well, that's, you know, that's nice that she's trying to be helpful to people. But basically, you know, people don't change their beliefs, their thoughts, unless unless they want to, and they have to see that there's no benefit to them. You know, so you can't just tell them, well, don't invest in that. They have to see that that investment is not giving them a benefit. Okay, it's the same thing with our thoughts here. We are invested in holding on to thoughts that are not true. And until we see that it's actually not a good idea because we're suffering for it, and that there's no benefit, then we're very motivated and we let it go. But otherwise, you know, I said, you know, I can tell you all I want, but you're not going to change your thinking unless you want to, right? Yeah, I go, well, it's the same thing. So when you're ready and you want to change your thinking, you will. And that's because, you know, everyone is going to experience the effects of what we make. And those experiences are not meant to be punishing to us, you know, because we label them catastrophes or bad or something, you know. They're really the lessons that we're here to learn, which will be the correction to our thinking. If we want to be proactive, we don't have to wait to have to repeat all these same experiences of suffering that bring suffering. You know, we can try to do the inner work and try to get to the error and correct it before it has to manifest in the world as an experience for us. So yeah, so many things happen in our life, what we call our life here. But number 8 says yourself is still in peace, even though your mind is in conflict. And precisely because our mind is in conflict, we manifest experiences that are conflicting, that are fearful. So it's just saying, you know, there's more healing work to be done here. We have not gone far back enough to the point where we can recognize that the separation is impossible and it never happened. And until we get to that point, we're going to have fearful experiences. But as you approach the beginning, you feel the fear of the destruction. Okay, so as we get closer to the beginning, the fear that we will feel is this fear of the destruction of your thought system upon you, as if it were the fear of death. Okay, and that's why we're so afraid of death. Okay, it's, you know, it's the end of the body for a physical death, but the body doesn't have to die to be able to release the ego thought system, and that can feel like you're going to die, but you're not dying physically. Except that it's not the way that the ego perceives it is, oh my gosh, this is the destruction, you know, this is the end. but it's not a destruction because it was never real to begin with. So how can it's just like the little character Mario in the game, you know, the character is not real in the first place. Okay, so you miss the jump and you go into the deep, the darkness, the deep abyss. Okay, but nothing happened to Mario. So because it wasn't real in the first place. So so that's all there. Okay. Any questions on that one?
No, that was
Nope.
a good explanation.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, number 6.
The branch that bears no fruit will be cut off and will wither away. Be glad. The light will shine from the true foundation of life, and your own thought system will stand corrected. It cannot stand otherwise. You who fear salvation are choosing death. Life and death, light and darkness, knowledge and perception are irreconcilable. To believe that they can be reconciled is to believe that God and his Son cannot. Only the oneness of knowledge is free of conflict. Your kingdom is not of this world because it was given you from beyond this world. Only in this world is the idea of an authority problem meaningful. The world is not left by death, but by truth, and truth can be known by all those for whom the kingdom was created and for whom it waits.
Okay. Anything come up there, Sonia, for you?
Yeah, I mean, just the thought, like, well, I believed it too, that if you die, then that's the only means of escape, especially from, the whatever kind of like depressing thoughts you have, or, like sometimes that really does feel like it's the only escape, but it's not really an escape. Like I had to realize that too. So that was the only thing that came up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's really good. Yeah. Okay, well, let's just take it line by line then. The branch that bears no fruit will be cut off and will wither away. That's in the New Testament, that's in the Bible. And what it's referring to here is it's talking about the ego thought system as the branch that bears no fruit. So even though the ego thought system, you know, manifests things in the world as miscreations, they're not real effects in the sense that there's no change to the true self. It does have, remember up here, it says that the effects are real. Where did it say? It was talking about, let me see if I can find that, because sometimes I've worked with people and they will kind of take pieces of what the course says and they will say, oh, hey, here's a little loophole, I can do whatever the heck I want because it's not real anyway. The effects aren't real anyway. You see what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
so so that's the idea that let's see. They will be real to you. So here we go. In paragraph 3, line 3, all beliefs are real to the believer. Okay. So even though they're false ideas, they're lies, okay, they're still going to be real to you because you're the believer. You're the one that's giving them power. So they will have effects on you. They have absolutely no effects on your true self, but the self-image that we made as a separate ego self is going to experience the effects. Does that make sense, Connie?
Yes, the ego self will feel those effects.
Yes, and the ego self will project them, will do its best to project them onto the body. So
Mm,
all the symptoms that the body has, they're not sickness of the body, they're the sickness of the mind, of the ego.
mhm. So what about like holding on to thoughts of things that you've done in the past that you know, don't feel so good about?
Mhm,
Is
mhm.
that the same thing?
That's the same thing, because by holding on to them, it means that we have not forgiven them. And
Right.
yes, and therefore we are holding on to whatever the judgment is there, the grievance, okay? And there's going to be conflict and fear in there. And
Mm,
those thoughts are then going to be projected. Even if they're in the unconscious mind, they get projected and they're going to show up in some way in our experience, okay? Because the unconscious is really just projected onto the world here.
mhm,
So we see it really in plain sight. So that's what why the Course says that darkness cannot hide.
mhm.
Yeah. So and until that's healed, we're going to keep repeating the same type of quote unquote trauma.
Mhm,
You see what I'm saying?
mhm.
Because it's another opportunity to heal it. You know, it's not a bad thing. I mean, it can be a very painful thing because, you know, there's conflict and fear in there, but it's simply an opportunity again to see the error and to forgive it. So it keeps showing up. It's just recycled until it's healed. And that's how we can try to kind of do proactive forgiveness. It's not really proactive, but it's intentionally looking at our past and intentionally going to those memories and doing our forgiveness work so that we don't have to wait until it shows up as an experience again to work with it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so it says, be glad, the light will shine from the true foundation of life, and your own thought system will stand corrected. And that's basically the correction of the Holy Spirit, which is the undoing of the error, which is the undoing of the ego thought system. Because the ego thought system cannot really stand without our own belief in it. It has no basis for standing. It has no real cause. God did not create it.
Mhm.
Okay. And the only thing that sustains it is our attachment to it, our belief. And it says, you who fear salvation are choosing death. Mm. And yeah, I mean, we're afraid of God. We're afraid of salvation. And by doing so, we're choosing the darkness of the ego thought system, which is fearful. Yeah, and let's see, life and death, light and darkness, knowledge and perception are irreconcilable. And I think it was in the beginning when we were looking at the principles of the miracles, it said that there were some ideas that could not be, let's see, what was the word? That were not, they were not dualistic. They only, they were whole. And that's why life, because life is one of those, and light is one of those, and knowledge is one of those. And that's why they're not reconcilable, because they're not part of the dualistic
Mhm.
ego thought system.
Yeah.
So death does not exist apart from a block to light. I'm sorry. Darkness does not exist apart from a block to light. And I guess that would be the same thing for death. It's a belief. And without that belief, there's no death. And the same thing with perception. So perception is a decision to not know. So it's a rejection of knowledge. And therefore it takes us into illusion because the only thing that's reality is knowledge as God created it. And illusion and reality cannot be reconciled. And that, I think that's one of the, I don't know why, but sometimes we really try really hard to reconcile things that are not reconcilable. We think that that's the solution to the conflict that we feel inside, but we actually hold on to the conflict that way. Because we want to believe that we are both good and bad, things like that, or we want to believe that both light and darkness can exist, within us. Yeah, Sonia?
That kind of reminds me of the idea of trying to replace like positive thoughts with negative thoughts. Or like the idea of you're not really letting go of the cause in the first place. It's just kind of like putting over a blanket or like over the, yeah.
Oh, yeah, but I think you meant replacing negative thoughts with positive thoughts.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's kind of like the art of positive thinking, where you have these positive sayings, right? Positive thoughts, like, oh, if I feel that I'm like not good enough, then I make a little mantra that says, I look in the mirror and I say, you are worthy, you are valuable, you are deserving, and so by repetition we try to kind of like just overpower the other belief. Okay. Which is a little bit like hypnotherapy. Okay, so we're attempting to work with our belief system, but we're not going to the we're not going to the problem of, we're not going deep enough, which is what's saying over here. You have not gone to the beginning. You have not gone in paragraph 5, line 9. You have not yet gone back far enough, and that's why you become so fearful. Yes, so we use force because that's how we try to control these negative thoughts. I'm just going to repeat this, 100 times a day and force that negative thought down, control it, that kind of a thing.
And could you also say that that's like the idea of balance too? Because I hear that like so often, like especially like on, just like on the internet and social media and stuff. I think it's probably part of the new age idea, but I think people are trying to reconcile
Yes,
the negative and the positive and the good and the
yes,
bad, evil
yes.
and light. So by trying to do that, they're trying to balance as if those two had reality,
Yes, so they're
right?
trying to balance them. Yes, because they're trying to deal with a conflict. Okay, so the separation, if there's imbalance like this, then the separation is really obvious, and so you can really tune into the conflict. It's a big conflict. But if you try to do this and balance them, then there's still separation there, but you're the imbalance is not so big. So it's the idea of, I think, it's very prevalent in the world, because um, we're trying to address equality at the level of at the manifested level. Okay. And we're not going back far enough to the mind, where the inequality is a belief of separation. Yeah. And so we are basically just wasting time, because we're postponing the decision, because we're very attached to the world, and we don't want to let go the ego thoughts that make it, because we're invested in the things of the world. I mean, we get comfortable. We like, what we make. And maybe we feel proud. Maybe we believe that, they're great achievements, or whatever our beliefs are. We definitely want them to be real. So yeah, so the idea of balance has a lot to do also with the idea of energy, of trying to, it's an idea of establishing, I think it's a confusion of peace with balance. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's a
I
way
think
to
that's
try.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like saying, well, an imbalance like this is really stressful, but if I bring it here, then it's not so stressful. I can hardly notice it. So then I have peace. But we have not addressed the opposition of the two thoughts.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
It's
so,
like, kind of like in talking about all the bad things that are going on in the world, and then people will say, well, there's a lot of good things too that we need to focus on. So again, just trying to
yes.
balance out that conflict.
Yes,
Yeah.
because what we're trying to do is we're trying to control how we feel.
Sure.
So we feel bad when we see all this conflict. And then I'm like, well, yeah, but let's look at the bright side, and then I just shift my attention, and now I can make myself feel good. And what I've basically done is I've just left this other side out of the picture. And I've just basically shoved it under the rug. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the real source of the issue is always going back to separation from the source.
Yes, that's right.
It's so simple.
It's so
And
simple, but see, it goes back to right here, number 10,
Right.
on paragraph 5, number 10. As you approach the beginning, and I think that collectively there's enough people now in the world that are doing the inner work, that we're beginning to go back, approaching far enough, so that collectively there's this feeling of fear of the destruction of your thought system. And so what happens is that the reaction is either to really hold on and protect it, or to be open to it, and then you go with a flow, but but it gets harder and harder to stay in that middle position.
Yeah.
Do you see?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it gets harder and harder to not decide again. Yeah. Yeah. So this thing about reconciling, number 7, to believe that they can be reconciled is to believe that God and his son cannot. Okay. Because what it is we maintain the conflict, we maintain the separation by saying, no, there's good and there's bad, there's light and there's darkness, and they coexist. Well, they don't coexist because they don't get along and they oppose each other. So, you know, they're separate. Okay. And so we maintain that separation. And so we don't resolve the conflict. We don't resolve the separation. We just perpetuate it in time. And only the oneness of knowledge is free of conflict. And that's why it's inner peace. And inner peace is health. And I think that if more people understood that that is the source of health, it's inner peace, I really think that they would be a lot more open-minded. And usually, I mean, I work with people, you know, that have a lot of mental or physical issues that come to me to do EFT, and often it isn't until the person is sick and has exhausted all of the world resources that then they begin to look for alternatives, and that's okay, but you know, it's but in the meantime they're experiencing all this suffering. So yeah. So let's see, your kingdom is not of this world because it was given you from beyond this world. And so that's one of the things, is that our true creations are not of this world. And what's interesting to me is that the things that we make in the world, you know, are objects of our making. And this morning I was looking at that, and I was realizing that the self-concept becomes an image that has a form. And so we tend to look at it as an object. So we objectify ourselves and we make ourselves into a thing, and we make others into a thing. And so when we interact with people, when we have relationships with people, we tend to look at them more as, we're a good match because you're an object that's useful to me, that can meet my needs. And I'm a match for you because I can provide this that you don't have. And when I was looking at the object subject, because it's a separation, object subject, there's always a separation there. We're going to be in the wrong mind, and we're going to perceive the object as reflecting light back. Okay. And so what we do is we project on it what we want to see. So we are actually not seeing what is there now. We're not seeing the true self. So it's not helping us to see our true self. And so the way that I was noticing it was that, because we were talking about art and music and singing and cooking and sort of those creative things that we do in the world. And it seemed to me that when we are in a place of the right mind, of seeing past, of not seeing the world in terms of object and subject, that when we look at someone, we're actually not seeing an object, we're seeing like a portal, and there's light coming right through it. And yeah, Sonia?
Oh, I was just thinking that's communication.
Yeah.
Because that's all art is, at least for me, in my experience now. At least I can see that it's just communication. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's joyful.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that would be coming from the place of love, of truth. And the same with singing, because Teresa was talking about how much joy there is in singing. So it's in bringing forth, in you seeing the body as an instrument for communication, you see, not as a block that's an object that simply reflects back what we want to see, that we are, like a mirror, like Narcissus looking in a little pool and seeing himself reflected back. Yeah. But then we're seeing the light, you know, and we're seeing the light that is in everything. And so that's going back to the beginning. So as you approach the beginning and you dispel the darkness, then what's underneath it is just light, which is, you know, but what love is, light. And that's why it says down here on line 8, only the oneness of knowledge is free of conflict, because there's no separation in the light. Everyone shares in the light. Let's see. Only line 10, only in this world is the idea of an authority problem meaningful. Yes. So the idea of being self-created, there's no meaning in that when there's all oneness. It's like there's no separation. How can there be an authority problem? And 11, the world is not left by death, but by the truth. And the truth can be known by all of those for whom the kingdom was created, which is everyone, and for whom it waits. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so anything more on this section, creating versus the self-image? Okay, because that is the end of chapter 3. So then chapter 4 is the illusions of the ego. Yeah. Okay, so I guess we're gonna stop here for today. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. Okay.